Hello, everyone. Welcome to Pucks and Brews. I am your host, Michael Shades Sparacino, alongside, as always, Liam, the Shellmaster Godimer. First off, Liam, Rangers got the sweep. I think we're both in a good mood. How are you? And your mic's muted immediately.
It's
Immediately.
funny, your camera went out of focus in the
Right
beginning.
before we
Oh,
started
before
recording.
we start, and then after we start recording, that's when my mic's muted. That's how you know it's going to be a real dandy of an episode.
Oh, yeah.
But I'm doing well, Shades. As I mentioned when my mic was muted, our beloved New York Rangers have swept the Washington Capitals since we last spoke and are now up 1-0 on the Carolina Hurricanes. That's a recipe for a happy Liam, if you ask me. So.
It's a recipe for pretty happy shades, too, except, well, slightly happy shades because I didn't get to watch the freaking game. But other than that, I'm doing dandy today.
Yeah.
It's like 70 degrees out, nice, sunny.
The weather's finally turning. The Stanley Cup playoffs are ramping up. It's
Yeah.
it's a it's a good time.
Oh, 100%. And this is a milestone episode on the
Is it?
sole basis that it is episode 60, the big 60. But yeah, I unfortunately we don't dedicate episodes anymore to previous Rangers who wore the number, but Hank times two, let's just say it.
There you go. Hang times two. Twice as nice.
True. And I was too lazy to look somebody else up because I did that on the spot. But
See, I've been trying to think of a number 60 in the back of my head for the Rangers. Probably has to be another goalie, but
I wouldn't be surprised. But yeah, so what a first round. Oh, first and foremost, cheers. I got the cold
yeah.
brew as usual.
Cheers. I have nothing.
Nice. I needed this coffee so badly. And here we go.
Not
So,
sponsored, by the way.
what?
Not sponsored, by the
No,
way.
not sponsored at all. I
And by the way, Shades, I would like to mention just before we start. A fun fact for all of our fans, especially Ranger fans. No New York Ranger has ever worn number 60. So
really
it is Hank times two by default.
raise it up to the rafters.
Yes, yes.
I did not really, not one person.
Not one person has worn number 60 for the New York Rangers.
Wow, and we've had some players.
One of about seven numbers that have never been worn.
Huh, interesting. Meanwhile, we've had some weird numbers from players the last couple of years, but no 60, really.
Yep, no
Wow.
60.
That that's a surprise. Gotta be honest with you.
I'll just tell you the other numbers too, because 52, 60, 65, 66, 69, 78, 83, 85, and 98 have never been worn by the Rangers.
It
98
is
is a
in
little bit surprising.
that too, and it is an absolute disgrace that nobody has worn number 69. Absolute disgrace. Tragic.
But you know what? Whoever is going to wear number 69 first
Is
for the
getting their jersey raised to the rafters.
going to be an absolute legend. I don't
Absolute stunning.
care. Forward, defenseman, star winger, grinder, D-man, goalie, backup goalie, head coach, assistant coach, video room guy. Doesn't matter. Whoever number 69 is, legend, automatic Hall of Famer. But anyway,
Shout out
you
to
know,
the video room guys.
shout out to everybody. There are so many people that go behind, making a team successful on the ice. So shout out to all of y'all.
Yeah, yeah, seriously. Shout out to everybody. And just shout out to the NHL in general for giving us the best 2 months out of the year every year.
This has been awesome.
Well, besides that first round, because it was like pretty bad.
The first round on the Eastern side was not great. I think the West offered up a
A
little bit
little
better.
bit better.
Yeah.
A little bit better.
But with that said, let's get into it, Shades. Where do you want to start?
Well, let's start out in the Western Conference, and just because, we're getting into the meat of the episode here, sip of the cold brew.
There you go.
Let's start off. Let's go bottom to top.
Sure.
In the right, or excuse me, the left bottom quarter of the bracket, according to the NHL Bracket Challenge, we had the Edmonton Oilers going up against the Los Angeles Kings, in which the Edmonton Oilers won in 5 games. I don't think that comes as a shock at all. I mean, Edmonton and LA have been going up against each other for 3 consecutive years now in the playoffs. Edmonton has now won all three. In my opinion, the Kings were the weakest team to enter the playoffs in the Western Conference, and Edmonton was just able to take advantage of that.
Yeah, Shades, and I want to hold us both accountable. Do you remember your first round pick for this series?
I
Uh,
think I said Edmonton in seven.
Edmonton in seven. Okay, I went
That's it.
Edmonton for a sweep, and that's always a little bit of a risky pick, right? When you pick one team to sweep another. But I couldn't agree with you anymore, Shades. That LA, although they have a bright future, was the weakest team in this playoff. And when you have a
Well,
top
in the West.
or in the West,
Yeah.
or there's well, yeah, not the playoffs. We'll get to the minus 37 goal differential team. But anyway, yeah, LA bows out in rather quick fashion. And when a team has your number, sometimes that's just the way it goes. And Edmonton has LA's number, and they take them out in 5 games and gets the Oilers an ample amount of rest for their second round series coming up. And we'll get to it in just a minute, but it's awesome to have at least one Canadian team confirmed for the Western Conference Final. That's going to be nice.
Yes. And just for the sake of accuracy, on my official bracket, I did have Edmonton in six. So they sandwiched it right between the two of us.
Yeah, there you go. That's a win for both of us, I'd say.
Oh, I'll just take a
Yeah.
win on getting the series right in general. Screw the games.
Because it's not going to be all wins for Shades and I as
No.
we go through these series. So
As long as it doesn't end up like the 2019 first round where I was literally 1 for 8 because there was just upset after upset. But
yeah.
we don't need to harp on that. Moving on to the next series, the excuse me, not win. The Nashville Predators took on the Western Conference leading Vancouver Canucks, and I had Vancouver in seven. I was not too far off. This was honestly an underratedly good series because Vancouver came into the playoffs as the powerhouse of the Western Conference. Nashville came in as the great coached, great structured team who didn't really have a lot of star power on paper, as we have alluded to in previous episodes. But Nashville did what they did throughout the entirety of the regular season. They battled and put up a fight all the way till the end, and Vancouver finished them in six.
It was a fun series, right? And kind of all got going when Thatcher Demko, right, goes out in the beginning of the series, and suddenly the net belonged to Casey DeSmith. And by the time the series was over, it would belong to Arthur Seeloffs solely. And what a series it was, right? This wasn't kind of Vancouver steamrolling the wild card Predators in 6 games. This was Nashville putting up a legitimate fight. These were low scoring, tight games that a couple of them, I think two or at least two, possibly three, Nashville flat out gave away. I think Nashville lost, a 1 goal lead with 2.5 minutes left in one of the games. And then, of course, in the game that they get eliminated, a tight game where they're not able to get the all important goal, and Vancouver comes away with that win, and the series wins subsequently. So that was a fun series. Nashville's a young team; they're inexperienced, but they just didn't have enough firepower. But I like their coach. I think they're headed in a good direction with the way that their prospect pool is kind of laid out. But they have one massive decision to make, and that revolves around UC Saros in the offseason.
Oh,
But
yeah.
if you would have asked me at the beginning of the season, would I call a Nashville Predators campaign a success if they made the playoffs and drove the Vancouver Canucks to a 6 game hard fought series? I absolutely would have said a successful season for Nashville. And for Vancouver, they have one hot and heavy matchup coming up against the Edmonton Oilers, and I can't wait.
Same. But
And
cheers to
also, I'll hold myself accountable. I had Nashville in seven, so.
on my official bracket, I had Vancouver in seven. But hey, with the way that series played out, I mean, can't blame you for picking Nashville.
Yeah, it was kind of one of those things that the Predators were playing really good hockey going up until the playoffs started. And again, I looked at the goaltending situation, with Saros on one end and, Demko, I assumed he would have played the whole series, but of course that became a question. But Seelovs shuts that all down. So, tip your cap. Vancouver, a good year, and they win a playoff series finally in front of fans this time, which I think can bring their fans a lot of happiness. So good for them.
Good for them indeed. On to the second quarter of the bracket, the other half of the Western Conference. We had the Winnipeg Jets taking on the Colorado Avalanche. And to me, this was by far the biggest surprise of the first round. And as well as the biggest surprise, the biggest disappointment. because I had Winnipeg in 6, and my prediction was looking pretty good after the first game. And then Colorado just woke up and remembered, hey, we won the Stanley Cup 2 years ago, and we're pretty much that same team. And that's how they played because games 2 through 5, they annihilated Winnipeg. That's basically what happened.
Um, just pure annihilation, shades.
Yep.
That's that's it.
Yep.
You know,
Oh,
Winnipeg wins game one. Georgiev looks very shaky at the start of the series. And what really kind of gets me is that Connor Hellebuck in the kind of post-game press conference, or the exit interviews, I should say, for himself and his club, said that he played excellent hockey, one of his best series he's played in his entire playoff career. And when the goaltender is saying that, and when you have leadership right next to you, that's you talk about the Nashville Predators who have a decision to make and goal in the offseason. I think the Winnipeg Jets have just as big of a decision to make in their own right. But as far as the series, I think a lot of fans, people around the league, wrote off the Colorado Avalanche because, again, same thing with the Predators, right? The Winnipeg Jets, they're a young, up and coming, exciting team to watch. You look at their back end, they're built real well. Connor Hellebuck, one of the best goaltenders in the entire league. And the bottom line is they got heavily outplayed. And that's even with a legendary coach in Rick Bowness. Congratulations on your retirement, by the way, Rick. Um,
I'll do the cheers.
Cheers. Connor Hellebuck, Mark Scheifele, all these guys, and they weren't able to put it together. And the Colorado Avalanche really showed why they're still a force to be reckoned with. And again, I'll be the first to acknowledge it. I had Winnipeg winning the series, and I think I had Winnipeg winning the series rather handedly, and Colorado really shut all of that up. So, and you talk about a heck of a series coming up in the second round between Vancouver and Edmonton. I'll just throw it over to the other side and take a look at Dallas going up against the Colorado Avalanche. That's going to be insane. So,
Yeah, all the defensive structure and good even strength play that the Jets had over the course of the regular season, Colorado just went in there and said, yeah, I don't think so. This is our league again.
and nothing against Connor Hellebuck, but I think you have to give credit where it's due. Alexander Georgiev was the better goaltender at the end of the series. And I don't think that's something I expected to come out of my mouth before the series had started.
You and
So
me both, brother.
you got to give credit to Georgie. He's as big of a reason as any as to why Colorado dismantled Winnipeg as quickly as they did. But experience, flat out skill, and even strength play being dominated by the Avs is what led them to the series win. So
Yep. And where does Winnipeg go from here? That's a that's a go-to question for them, but that is a question that we will come back to in the offseason because now we have to talk about probably the best series of the first round. Dallas Stars going up against the Vegas Golden Knights. I fucking called it, Dallas in 7. I called it. I got it. It's on my bracket. It's set in stone. I actually got this one right, unlike another 7-game series in the first round on the East side. But remember how I was singing Dallas's praises at the beginning of the season?
I do.
Remember how I was singing Dallas's praises 2 weeks ago?
Yep.
I'm going to continue to sing their praises just because they beat Vegas. And dude, I was watching the last couple minutes of that game last night, and they just shut Vegas down. Eichel had 2 chances with a couple seconds left, did not take advantage of either shot he had. But dude, Dallas top to bottom after those first 2 games where Vegas got the jump on them, they turned it on. And this is a scary team.
That was a fantastic game seven. And I think some fans will tell you that it was a little bit of a boring game seven because you only see a certain number of goals, very low scoring, tight played affair. But for me, that was just awesome defensive hockey. And the Dallas Stars on home ice against the defending Stanley Cup champions win a hockey game. and they go on to the next round. I mean, that was straight up impressive. I mean, Jake Ottinger was terrific. I think it was Radek Foxer, right, with the backhander in the opening two
Yes.
minutes, third period, that gives Dallas the lead that they would, go on to win by. Eichel, a couple of chances, like you mentioned, in the final moments there. Also in the second period, right in the final minute, Eichel had a chance on the backhand with
I forget Zoom does that.
Eichel had a wide open net on the backhand. Ottinger kind of gets in the way, and puck goes off the side of the net. And it's plays like that that can prove to be the difference.
For anybody who is wondering why we just started bursting out laughing right there, you need to watch the video version because I'm not. Just
I
watch the
didn't do that
video
on
version.
purpose. I'm not in a position, but I think Zoom was just giving a thumbs up as everybody did in the entire world when the Dallas Stars sent the Vegas Golden Knights packing. I think the Golden Knights fought. I think if you're going to go down, right? I think you go down in a game seven on the road. I don't think everybody was healthy for Vegas. I don't think Mark Stone was healthy. Fine, I'll say it. I think maybe feeling some ill effects from that lacerated spleen. And I think he did take some time in last night's game off, going to the bench, getting that looked at. So it would have been a problem had they moved on to round two anyway. But again, Dallas does what they need to do on home ice. So credit to Ottinger, credit to Pete DeBoer, credit to that defensive core, and
Pete
a huge
DeBoer, by the way, 8-0 in game sevens.
yep. And a huge credit to that entire team because beating the Golden Knights as well structured and with the way that they play, they come at you, and to go and win that hockey game, a one goal hockey game, that's something to be credited for. So the Dallas Stars doesn't get any easier though. I bring to you the Colorado Avalanche, Nathan McKinnon and Cal McCarr. So
Which we'll get back to. But if I have my brain working correctly, would this be the third year in a row that the Stanley Cup champion loses in the first round the following year?
yes, I think it would be, right?
Yeah, because Tampa, after winning in 2021, no, wait, that was last year, wasn't it? No, no, no. It's 2 years in a row. Tampa lost in the final in 22.
Right.
But 2 years in a row, the Cup champion loses in the first round following year. And as you said, it does set up the second round matchups between the Dallas Stars and Colorado Avalanche and Canucks and Oilers. But before we get on to that, moving over to the first round, and let's go bottom to top again, shall we? Because why the hell not? We had the Carolina Hurricanes going up against the New York Islanders, and both of us did have Carolina. I had them in six. What did you have them in?
I think I had them in six or seven. I have to look back at the tape, but
Whatever. If I had them in seven, I put six on my bracket. So that's what I'm going with because that's the official, like actual accountable thing you can hold me to.
yep.
But yeah, so it wasn't easy for Carolina. I mean, the Islanders did what they do all season, and that's play good defensively structured hockey until they have a two-goal lead in the third period, or any lead in the third period for that matter. And they couldn't hold a lead. Carolina finished them off in five. No surprise that Carolina won the series. I think both of us were in agreement that they were the better team, and they outside of game four overtime, where Carolina looked like they were trying to give the game away to the Islanders, which they did, it never really looked like the Islanders were ever going to win the series.
Yeah, I don't think that they got totally outmatched by the Hurricanes, but I agree with what you said there. It never seemed like the Islanders were in control, despite, right, having leads late in games, like you mentioned. We just talked about two teams that have a goaltending question entering the offseason. Well, heading over to the Eastern Conference, we can add a third because Ilya Sorokin comes in,
Yeah.
he doesn't perform well at all, and Semyon Varlamov regains control of the net before the series is over. So, I think that is a subplot rather, that's certainly worth watching as we enter the offseason. But as far as the series goes, I think this is really simple. I think this is a Carolina team that is battle tested. They're better 5-on-5. Their special teams is better. And all those things really surfaced en route to the series win for the Hurricanes. So, but again, with that said, the Islanders were in it. And, if they just, I don't know, tighten things up in those moments, maybe we could be having a different conversation right now. But I think Lou Lamoriello really needs to go back to the drawing board, figure out what his goaltending situation looks like, and kind of get a better group to put it out there because they didn't give Carolina as much of a fight as I thought that they would. So
No, two of my very good Islanders fan friends were not happy with Lou after the deadline, and well, I mean, they weren't happy about what happened with the series, and I think both of us knew, and mostly everyone knew, that the Islanders not being able to hold a lead throughout the regular season was going to come back to bite them, and it did a few times in this series.
right, and no disrespect to the Islanders, right? But they weren't really in the conversation for the postseason kind of all throughout the year. And it wasn't until the coaching change, right, from Lambert over to Patrick Waugh, that kind of sprung them into some better hockey. So, it just goes to show you that you need to be consistent all throughout the year. The Islanders put themselves in a position in the first round to where they went up against a Carolina Hurricanes team that's extremely tough to beat in the playoffs. And once again, Shades, Carolina is the one to eliminate the Isles.
Yep. And moving on to the Rangers against the Capitals. The Rangers did, in fact, sweep the Capitals, which I knew the Capitals were bad coming into the series. We had Laviolette going up against his former team that he
Yep.
just came from. I didn't expect the sweep, though, so I'm still kind of surprised on that. I had them in six, but I mean, when we were previewing the series, we knew the Rangers were pretty much better in every single aspect. And we know there's was flaws with the team, but Washington was in fact the weakest team in the playoffs. You mentioned the minus 37 goal differential earlier. And while the Rangers did not play their best hockey, Washington still never stood a chance because they looked like they were mentally checked out by the time they got to the playoffs with how much work they had to put in at the tail end of the regular season just to get into the playoffs to begin with.
Yeah. I thought this wasn't your typical sweep. I think that Washington played better than a team that on paper you said just got swept, that you think they'd play, right? I think that they're very well coached. I think Spencer Carberry is awesome. I watched every single one of his post-game pressers, and he's got a really good hockey mind. And Washington is set up for success in the future. Like he's alongside those young coaches that are really making an impact, like your John Coopers, etc. So I was really impressed with Spencer Carberry. Um, Alexander Ovechkin looked like a ghost out there.
Yes.
He was just a non-factor in the series, and that's something that I wasn't expecting to say right at the beginning of the series. He didn't have a lot of help around him, but the bottom line is Washington's best offensive players were their young guys, Hendricks, Lapierre, and he only got in late in the series, but Ivan Miroshnichenko, who spent time with the Hershey Bears. Their entire decor outside of John Carlson were pretty much American Hockey League players. So yeah, a lot going on in this series. Charlie Lindgren tried to keep them in net, but was unable to do so. It wasn't a dominant sweep,
Yeah.
but the Rangers again, I just think they were too much for Washington to handle at the end of the day. Too much for a young team in their first kind of playoff run for a majority of the roster. So
Yeah, that was kind of an underwhelming sweep, wasn't it?
it was. But again, the
I'll still
Rangers
take it though.
with death by 1,000 cuts. A couple of shorthanded goals there on the road. Their power play was terrific. I don't think Shesterkin was amazing, but he didn't have to be. Um, and again, Laviolette against his former team came into the series with a game plan, and his team executed it.
I Shesterkin probably did have his best game of the series in game four, though, because he did make a good number of saves that needed to be made.
He did. I believe it was the goal in game three that he gave up to Carlson. I was like, whoa.
Oh yeah, that
I was like, oh,
yeah.
what's
But
what's going on here? But
but he shut it down after that.
But if you're still winning games, right? And, spoiler alert, if you're 5-0, through your first 5 games and your goaltender hasn't played his best hockey, that's good. That leaves room for improvement. So,
Yep, and that sets up a second round matchup with the Rangers and the Hurricanes. But onto the final quarter of the bracket in what ended up being the best first round series out of the Eastern Conference. The Boston Bruins, I knew I should have freaking picked them, beat the Toronto Maple Leafs in game 7 overtime. It's going to take me a couple weeks to get over this one about how you talked me into picking the Leafs, but the Bruins go up 3-1 in the series, just like they had done 2 previous times in both 2013 and 2018. And they blow the series lead to go 2 a game 7, and they end up picking the win up in overtime for the second time over the Toronto Maple Leafs, first time being since 2013, and now the Bruins have won 4 straight series against the Toronto Maple Leafs, dating back to that infamous 2013 Game 7 overtime winner by Patrice Bergeron.
yeah, I got a lot to say on this series. Um, I think Toronto fought, and I'm pretty proud of them, to be honest, from where they were dead in the water after losing both home games and going down 3-1 in the series.
And losing Matthews.
Matthews was out, Nylander,
Didn't
William
start the
Nylander.
series.
William Nylander ended up, fun fact, being the largest point producer for the Maple Leafs this series. And he didn't play in 2 games, 3 games.
At least
Gotta
two
get the
games.
exact number, but at least 2 games. Austin Matthews dealing with an illness and another injury on the side. Say what you want, but he battled and he came back for game 7. And the fact that he was centering the third line in game 7 said a lot about where his
Yes.
availability was
Yep.
at. I think it was less about, wow, he's going to be in the lineup to be the Austin Matthews we expect him to be, and more of, it's game 7. He's not 100%. We just need to have him in the lineup because it's a bad look if he's not in the lineup. And Matthews plays, and well, guess what? He has a primary assist on the only goal for the Leafs in game 7. I thought Toronto actually played a pretty good game 7. I thought their worst moments of the night were in overtime, and I think they kind of fell asleep in the opening 3 minutes. But I think all throughout regulation, they were excellent. And quite frankly, I don't want to call out the goaltender, but I think Ilya Samsonov let off a softie past him to tie the game. Kind of crowd gets underneath the Bruins, right? Maple Leafs had just taken the first lead of the game for either team. A good opportunity towards net, puck at the side of the goal, and it goes right over Samsonov's shoulder. I'm not a goaltender. Samsonov is very talented, but you got to stop that puck. You
Yep.
got to stop that puck.
Hey, you and I texted each other towards the end
Steve
of
Dangle said
regulation.
you got to stop that puck.
Oh yeah, he 100% did, and he's 100% right. But you and I were texting at the end of regulation where Pasternak had, let's face it, a very large left side of the net that was open that he
Yep.
missed with a slap shot with about a minute left. And I texted you, if Boston loses this game, that was their chance. The both of us also said, I'm pretty sure you said it, if Samsonov doesn't let that goal in, the Leafs win this game in regulation.
That's what I said. Yeah.
That's exactly what you said. And that in I mean in retrospect, that did kind of cost the Maple Leafs that goal.
Did. And then once you get to overtime, right? Kind of
Anything
fell
can
asleep
happen.
a little bit. Anything can happen, and that's just a great play by 2 very talented players. That's Lindholm knowing that first line's on the ice for Toronto. It's the opening minute, opening 2 minutes of overtime. He knows his rink better than anybody else. Just slap it off the corner boards, Pasternak wide open, breakaway backhand, and it's in. So I think Toronto deserved a better fate, but once again, they fall to the Boston Bruins in the first round. Um, I think this is the offseason where a decision has to be made on one of the core 4 members or core 5. Can add Morgan Riley to the list too, maybe because I believe Morgan Riley is the only player to be on both teams, with Matthews, with the core four, but one of the few players to be on the team since the 2018 series against Boston as well. So, but yeah, I got to be really disappointed if I'm a Leafs fan. I'm dejected. I don't know where to go, because I saw my team play two really good games leading up to Game 7, got themselves back in the series. Nylander scores the goal, and again, overtime is really a crapshoot sometimes. And that's where skilled players make their money, and that's where Hampus Lindholm and David Pastrnak made their money.
He made it a large.
Yeah, he did.
He
He
made
did.
it a
That's an
large.
awesome moment for the Bruins too, because I don't know what Jim Montgomery's future looks like if they lose in overtime. So for a
Yeah,
second year in Game 7 on home ice.
after having a 3-1 series lead. Yeah, that was a very close call for both him and the team.
What a finish.
And that takes us to our eighth and final series of the first round. The Florida Panthers went up against the Tampa Bay Lightning, and Florida, this was kind of another annihilation. Let's be honest here.
A similar series for me as to Colorado against Winnipeg. And, just kind of didn't really take into account the juggernaut that the Florida Panthers are and were entering the postseason. And they really dismantled the Lightning. Surely a couple of close calls there on a couple of goaltender interference situations in the final game, in the elimination game for Tampa Bay. But outside of that, I think anybody that had watched that series from top to bottom, you can say that Florida was the better team. They had the better goaltender. They had the better coach. Their special teams were better, and they were able to come through in the big time moments. So they deserve the series. And this, for me, Shades, could, in the bigger picture, really be the changing of the guard in the Atlantic Division. I think now, after this series, I can sit back and say, all right, if the sentiment wasn't already this way before, this is Florida's division every single year now. And that's quite a statement to make after the run that Tampa Bay had. But to watch them go down, as easily as they did, it was a shock.
Yeah, I think the changing of the guard happened last year, to be honest with you, as soon as Florida just murdered Toronto. But
I think I just need to see a head-to-head matchup between the two, and you know, you always think that the postseason is a different animal, and sometimes, different teams are going to show up. But for me, the regular season Florida Panthers and the regular season Tampa Bay Lightning showed up in this series. And the fact of the matter is, Florida was the best team in the Atlantic Division, and they proved it with this series win. So I'll tip my cap to the Panthers. I got this one wrong.
yeah, and honestly, I think they were the best team in the first round out of the East, to be honest with you.
Well, Shades, like I go back to the Rangers last year, right? When they make all of these big time trade deadline additions. And the Panthers, kind of on the same token this year, did much of the same thing. And not just because that the Rangers last year and the Panthers this year acquired the same player in Vladimir Tarasenko, but it doesn't always work out. I thought it was a shoo-in that the Rangers were going to beat the inexperienced Devils last year in the first round, and it didn't happen.
I
And I
didn't think that was a shoe-in at all at the time. You remember.
Yeah, you didn't, but I did, and I kind of looked at the Rangers, who were a year, right, removed from an Eastern Conference final appearance against the same Tampa Bay Lightning. It's just interesting how things go, and the Panthers definitely earned this one. That's how I'll surmise it.
Yeah, I mean, hey, John Cooper even said after game 3,
Yeah.
when, the Panthers went up 3-0, it's like, if you don't want to be here, leave. That's basically what he said.
And you know what? His team showed up in the next game.
Yeah.
So they don't win the series, but who knows, right? If that goaltender interference call on Cirelli, goes a little bit of a different direction, maybe we're having a different conversation right now. But again, the Panthers totally earned it, and you didn't see over the last number of years, you haven't seen Tampa Bay kind of go down in a heap like they did this postseason, and for the first time, I saw that, and outside of 2019 against Columbus. But, well, that's 5 years ago now. So,
Yeah. No, but hey, you got to give credit to Tampa, though. I mean, they were a very good team for a very long time, from 2015 all the way up until 2022 when they lost in the Cup final. They were just basically a juggernaut
and I think they still are, at the end of the day, it didn't
to an
go
extent.
right. You still have Andrei Vasilevsky, you still have a number one goaltender, you still have a number one D in Victor Hedman. But there is a massive, massive question mark in the offseason with Steven Stamkos coming up. And it's kind of what direction does Julian Brisebois' team go in the next few years here? And I don't know, Shades. I think if you talk to people around the Tampa Bay organization, I think that they'll tell you that Stammer is a lifetime member of the Tampa Bay Lightning. But also, on the same token, is that the direction that the Lightning are headed in? Are they going to keep pushing it? You've seen teams like the Washington Capitals and the Pittsburgh Penguins that continued to push the envelope even though it was past their time. If Pittsburgh could go back and take a look at the players that they re-signed and brought back, Malkin on a 6-year deal, Letang on a 6-year deal, maybe if they had gone in a different direction then, their future might look a little bit more bright now. So many questions. But tip your cap to the Florida Panthers. They're going to be a really tough out. So,
Yep, that they are. And that is our conclusion recap of the first round. And on to the second round we go. Let's start in the West again. Let's go bottom to top.
sure.
So Vancouver going up against Edmonton. And I don't know, man. It's like I I saw the odds for the series. Vancouver was plus 250. That was a little eye-opening, but to me that said, I guess that's how bettors are factoring in as much as they are the goaltending situation with Vancouver. And well, I have Edmonton going to the conference final in my bracket just because Edmonton has this weird thing about them where they will pretty much at this point in time with McDavid in his prime every other year make it to the Western Conference final and then just get absolutely destroyed by the team coming out of the other half of the West. But this is my bracket. I had 6 out of 8 right the first round. I'm going to stick with it, especially with the goaltending question for Vancouver. But I think Vancouver is going to bring it to them. I will say Edmonton in 6 because I think their top guys are going to answer the bell when they need to and score the opportune goals when they need to. But I don't think Vancouver is going to be a tough out. And I could see this going 7, but I'll officially say it goes 6. What say you?
Well, I'm going to bring out a big stat for you before I make my prediction.
Hit
The
me.
Edmonton Oilers head to head against the Vancouver Canucks this season, 0-4-0. Lost 4 games against the Canucks this year.
Just for the record, I'm rooting for Vancouver to win this series.
The finals were 8-1 Vancouver, 4-3, 6-2, and 3-1. I don't take much stock into the regular season. And of course, I think it's good to mention that 3 out of the 4 of those games were played with a different head coach for the Oilers. Chris Knobloch comes in at the latter half of the year. Listen, Zach Hyman, 54 goals in the regular season, 100 assist year for Connor McDavid. They pick up right where they left off in the regular season in the first round against the Kings. But with that said, Arthur Seelov's played really well. And when it comes down to the goaltending shades after round 1, I kind of give it a wash. I don't think one team has an upper leg over the other. Of course, power play, and the way that Edmonton can roll out 4 lines and their, structured decor has a lot to do with it. They score a ton of goals, 3.6 goals per game in the regular season. I just think this comes down to experience, and we've seen the Oilers in the second round more often than we have the Vancouver Canucks, especially in recent years. So I'm going to take Edmonton to win this series in 6 games, like you said. So I agree.
Yeah, see, the reason I'm picking Edmonton, there's always that one team, whether it be the first round or the second round, that loses a series that they probably shouldn't, and I just have that feeling about Vancouver going into this series.
Right.
But so both of us have Vancouver in 6.
I'm going to take no, I'm taking Edmonton.
Excuse me, Edmonton in 6.
Yep, Edmonton in 6. And again, you look at playoff point leaders right now: Connor McDavid, Leon Draisaitl, Mika Zibanejad. 12, 10,
Really?
12, 10, and 10.
Hmm.
Yep.
That's a little surprising, not gonna lie.
McDavid, a goal and 11 assists.
Damn.
So he is playmaking at an elite level. And you have a Canucks team that kind of came off of a series against the Nashville Predators and where they weren't able to generate a ton 5-on-5. I don't know with this high-powered offense of the Oilers if they're going to be able to catch up with them. So
Yeah, I think Nashville is a better defensive team and just, better defensively structured overall than the Oilers, but I'm gonna keep going back to I just have a feeling the Canucks are gonna blow this series.
yeah, so
It,
I'm going to take Edmonton in 6.
yeah, just a gut feeling for me.
Yep.
Moving on to the other more kind of surprising and just beast matchup of the Western Conference. The Dallas Stars taking on the seemingly have awoken the beast from 2 years ago, Colorado Avalanche. I am looking forward to this series more than any other series this second round, and that's coming from a Rangers fan whose team is playing in the second round. These two teams are fucking stacked, for lack of a better term. I can't. This is gonna go seven, my prediction, because we saw what the Stars looked like in round one against a very offensively loaded on paper Vegas Golden Knights team. We saw Colorado dismantle everything that the Jets were doing well in the regular season in 5 games in the first round. 7 games. I'm going to stick with my bracket here and say Dallas squeaks this one out.
Hmm. I'm going to go in a different direction. I'm going to say a team squeaks it out, but I'm going to say the Avs squeak it out. Colorado is a team on a mission for me. They came in, I wouldn't say on paper as underdogs against Winnipeg, but a lot of people wrote off the Colorado Avalanche. And I think they are headed towards an absolute war head to head against the Dallas Stars. And it's going to be awesome. But for me, I just watched the Colorado Avalanche win a series in 5 games in which they weren't tossed around physically too much. Winnipeg doesn't play that style. And I look at a Dallas Stars team that just played a grueling 7 game series and had to scratch and claw for every single inch they got in that series against the Vegas Golden Knights. And that, for me, is going to be the difference in this series and why Colorado moves on. But a
I
lot of it hinges on Georgiev.
Oh
So,
yeah.
and Ottinger's the better goalie. So that has me worried a little bit. So,
Yeah, honestly, uh in goal, definitely Ottinger gets the nod there. Defensively, I actually think both of these teams are pretty even
yeah.
because
And
both teams on paper and on the ice are very good on defense.
yeah, for sure. And also, I want to mention that Pete DeBoer, like we talked about earlier, is undefeated in game sevens. So the longer this series goes, uh, you know, very rarely is Jared Bednar, outcoached. But Pete DeBoer is one of those guys that can give him a run for his money. So if Colorado's going to win this, they're going to have to win this quick. And we'll see if they're going to be able to do that because Dallas has fought all year. I mean, they won the Central, and that was a really tough division at the end of the day, right? They win it by 3 points over the Jets. Colorado was only 6 points behind. So,
Oh yeah. I mean, like I said, this is going to be an absolute great series of the second round, in my opinion.
yep.
I got to stick with the bracket because if I pick all 4 series right, my final 4 will be correct. So I'm going to stick with it. Say the Stars win. But I will end it with this. If Colorado looks like they did against Winnipeg, I'm picking them to win the cup.
Hmm.
That's what I'll say.
Well, and here's what I'll say to finish it off. I'm
You hope
excited.
the Rangers beat them.
No, I'm excited that we're finally going to see McKinnon versus McDavid. That's
Hopefully.
in the Western Conference Final. So,
Hopefully.
hopefully.
We never get what we want. And when we do, it's usually a letdown because it happens the worst year out of like a 4 year span. So tell me not.
And just because I mentioned the head-to-head matchup for the Edmonton Vancouver series, I'll do the same here. Colorado 3-1 against Dallas in the regular season. So, but a lot of close games on that list. So
Yeah. All right. So you got Colorado and how many again?
I have Colorado in 6 games.
Colorado in 6. I got Dallas
Maybe
in 7.
7, but I'll lock in 6
I
because
like it.
I don't think that Colorado's beaten Pete DeBoer in a game 7. So I kind of can't have it go 7. So I'll go 6.
I like it. I like it. And isn't Colorado on a bad string of game sevens, or am I making that up or mixing that with another team?
I'm not sure, to be honest.
I heard somebody talking about it last night, but I don't remember if they said Colorado or a different team. I don't want to waste too much time here.
Well, in the 2023 first round, they lost game 7, remember, to the Kraken.
Oh yes, I
Uh,
remember that. Yeah.
so, you know, at least in most recent history. And
I
okay,
don't think any of their series went 7 when they won the cup 2 years ago.
so they lost 5-4 to Dallas in game 7 in 2020.
Hmm.
And before that, and then they lost in game 7 to San Jose in 2019. So 3 out of the last 5 years, Colorado has been bounced in a game 7.
Yeah. Something to keep an eye on, something to keep, a
And then one of the
thought.
other years they go and win the cup. So
Yeah.
unpredictable.
Unpredictable is probably the best word because, hey, Washington finally won the cup after everybody thought their window was slammed shut.
Right.
They go on to win the cup literally in the last year of their window, or in hindsight.
One of their last years, yeah.
Yeah. No, that was the last year in hindsight. But you got Colorado, I got Dallas, and I'm very much looking forward to this series. I think you are too, as well as any hockey fan.
I am. Yep.
Can't wait. Speaking of can't wait, we move on to our beloved New York Rangers going up against the Carolina Hurricanes. Game 1 has already happened, like we mentioned earlier. At least I think we did. We might have been talking off recording, but the Rangers did in fact grab game 1 away from the Hurricanes. It was a 4-3 game, ended up being the final score. Rangers went up 3-1, and as soon as that happened, I knew it was going to come down to the final minute of the game just because I had a gut feeling, and I've watched this team all year as much as I can, and I somehow deep down just knew. They ended up pulling the game out 4-3 after Carolina made it a 1-goal game with about just over a minute left, if I remember correctly. Going into the series, I had Rangers in 7 because showing my bias, obviously. The Rangers are coming off 2 years ago, a playoff series win against these same Hurricanes in 7 games. And even though Carolina added Kuznetsov and Gensel at the trade deadline, I think the Rangers. Okay, well, I know the Rangers can squeak this series out based on what happened 2 years ago, but I think the Rangers will win, showing my bias again for two main reasons: Igor Shesterkin and their power play. And also, three, this ties back into number one. Carolina is an undisciplined team, and I think that's going to come back and bite them in the ass over the course of the series.
So what's your prediction?
Rangers in 7.
Rangers in 7. Okay. Well, so
Carolina's going to put up a fight.
yeah, Carolina is definitely going to give up a fight. But for me, Shades, it all comes down to the special teams. And the Rangers able to put home 2 power play goals in game 1. You want to take a guess of what the PK percentage is for the Carolina Hurricanes this postseason?
60%.
61.5%. They
I was
str
close.
Yeah, very good. They struggled a ton against the New York Islanders. They have allowed um 6 goals in 22 tries on the PK. Um,
Yikes.
and that's where the Rangers really excel. So for me, that's where the difference lies. And also on the other side, I think that the Rangers PK might just be as strong as their power play is, which is certainly saying something. And when you can shut down Svechnikov and Gensel and Sebastian Aho and Brent Burns and Timo Teravainen, that gives you a huge leg up. I think that the Rangers came in really well prepared for this game 1. I think Peter Laviolette had them ready. One thing of note before the series started that really stood out to me, I think one of the reporters for the Rangers on their beat asked Laviolette, kind of, are you going to take what the Rangers were able to do in their series against Carolina 2 years ago where they won in 7 games. He said, I'm throwing that all out the window. That film goes all out the window. We win the series. I don't care. We're going to play our game. And, I think that's a big reason why they were able to win game 1. And Shades, I mean, I kind of went off the ball a little bit in the last episode, making the sweep prediction for the Oilers over the Kings. I won't do the same here, but I think it's going to be a little bit of a shorter series than I think many of us expect. I'm going to take the Rangers and I'm going to take them in 5 games
All right, bold, bold.
because I think they've been excellent on the road. And I think if they've already won 1 game at home, and if, you're able to steal one in Carolina and you come back to the Garden with a 3-1 series lead, I don't see the Hurricanes coming back from that. So
No, no, it's a look, it's a bold prediction, but I can 100% get behind what you're saying. The only thing that I'm worried about going into the series, and I unfortunately noticed this as a theme for several times throughout the regular season, for whatever reason, when the Rangers have a 2-goal lead, they completely take their foot off the gas pedal, and that scares me.
uh,
You've seen it. I'm not making this up. You can honestly, this is just a factual observation half the time. When they get a multi-goal lead, for some reason, they allow other teams back into the game and make it way more difficult for themselves for no reason. It has been frustrating as hell to watch all season. It happened again in game 1 yesterday. It's also Monday, May 6th at 6:01 p.m., by the way. At the time we're recording this, this will be out Tuesday. If they keep pulling the same bullshit, eventually it will come back to bite them in the ass.
yes, I see what you're saying.
But we are not the Islanders, and we have actually been able to win most of those games.
Yeah, we won. So while I don't disagree with you, the Rangers are 5-0. So until we lose a game, that's kind of when that conversation can pick up. But for right now, going into game 2, we haven't lost yet this playoff. So if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
I mean, definitely, I would say fix it
But
because
again,
it
they're
is a
working on it.
noticeable problem.
Well, you know what? They're ramping up the intensity in practice, and you bet that Peter Laviolette and Michael Pekka and all the guys on the Rangers coaching staff, they realize the small areas of the game where they need to improve. For me, I just think that they need to stay a little bit more disciplined. I think, force Carolina into bad penalties.
Yeah.
I think Rempe's kind of been picked out by the officials this offseason.
Yes.
Excuse me, this postseason so far. But also at the same time, I think it's on Laviolette to tell Rempe, all right, don't put yourself in that situation.
Yep.
You know, when we need it, we'll go to you. But that's yeah, I mean, playing better with a lead, sure, but for me, also staying more disciplined. Because their even strength play has been pretty good. Mika Zibanejad scored at even strength in game 1. Just saying,
It must
a
have been
rare
nice to
sight to see
watch.
this season.
Must have been nice to watch. I was at work,
Yeah, so.
but yeah. No, hopefully they do wake up at even strength because, like you and I mentioned earlier, they did not look convincing at even strength against Washington. So
And also, I have to pick the Rangers in 5 because I'll be at games 3 and 4. So, they have to win at least one in Carolina, please.
hopefully they win both.
That would be nice. They win the series in Carolina, a nice 2 sweeps in a row. When was the last time a team swept the first 2 rounds of a playoff series in the NHL?
Why do I have a feeling the answer to that question is more recent than we think? If a team didn't do it within the last 6 or 7 years, they won or they either lost one game on their way to the conference final. You know what? It might be Anaheim in 2017.
Really?
It might 2017, 2015. It might be Anaheim.
Who
It
knows?
might be. You know what? Just for I feel like looking this up now because I know one team either did it or came close to doing it, and I have a feeling it was them.
Well, it wasn't Florida, right? Because Florida swept Carolina. Did they beat Toronto in 5 last year?
I believe so.
Okay.
Okay, 2015 Stanley Cup playoffs. That is, can I just get the outcome of the freaking series, please? I don't need to see every single game. All right. Hope nope, that did not help. Oh, wait a second. Okay, so Anaheim did lose one game en route to the Western Conference Final in 2015, where Chicago beat them in seven. So that not bad, not bad for me and my brain right there, right?
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, and then of course Florida does it last year. That doesn't even come to mind.
Mm.
But all right, so I got Rangers in seven. You got Rangers in five. Let's go Rangers. That's really all I need to say.
Right on.
And that brings us to our fourth and final second round prediction. I keep catching myself. This is good. And we have in our final quarter of the second round, we have the Florida Panthers going up against the Boston Bruins. I'm going to skip ahead to my prediction, Panthers in five. Why do I say that? Uh, because I saw both teams play in the first round. I saw the Panthers annihilate the Lightning, which I thought the Lightning were going to put up more of a fight, but we saw that team was, you know, past the hill on the way down, at least for the time being. And then I saw the Bruins and the Maple Leafs play, and I frankly saw two underwhelming teams. And I think the Panthers are a significant step up from the Maple Leafs, and I think they're just going to dismantle them. That's just me.
The last two series that I have seen in the Eastern Conference for the Florida Panthers, they have swept. A sweep of the Carolina Hurricanes and now a sweep of the Tampa Bay Lightning. And guess what? They're going to do it for a third time, and they're going to sweep the Boston Bruins. Because if they dismantle the Tampa Bay Lightning in 5 games, like they just did, Tampa Bay, excuse my dog, Oakley,
Hmm.
Tampa Bay is a very good team. Boston, I think, is a step below. And if Florida took out Tampa Bay in 5, I think they'll take out Boston in 4. And I think I would be giving the same prediction, whether it was Toronto or Boston that won game 7. I just think Florida is that good, top to bottom. And if there's one saving grace possibly for the Boston Bruins in this series, it's Jeremy Swayman. But I don't think that's going to be enough.
Yeah, I mean, that might be the only edge that I could give Boston, really. I mean, their goaltending has been unbelievable, but you compare the rest of the team, both offensively, defensively, and just as a collective overall. I mean, Florida is just on another level. And it would be interesting to see in a hypothetical situation if Florida was out west, but that's not the reality of the situation. We can't live in what ifs. But I mean, out of that quarter of the bracket, I don't think Florida making anything less than an Eastern Conference final would be shocking, really. And your mic's muted again.
I think that this is an entirely different landscape than what we saw last year in the first round. I think that was a Bruins team, in many's opinion, and including my own. That was their last kind of run for a championship, in my opinion. They had Bergeron, they had Krejci, and after that season, they would both be gone. And kind of the outlook for the team and the expectations, more accurately, would be lessened a little bit. And again, it was a 7-game series then, and I think both teams are just in completely different situations a year later. And Florida is on their way up and ready to stay up for a long time. And Boston, really outside of Jeremy Swayman, doesn't really give me a lot to be excited about in this series. So, you know, I think it was a exciting first round series for the Boston Bruins. I think that, they get to take down the Toronto Maple Leafs yet again in a game 7. But I think that's where the fun ends on this ride, because the Panthers are there. They're poised for an Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, I mean, that first round series between Boston and Toronto, that's one of those series where you just look at and you just go, neither one of these teams is making the conference final.
Exactly. Exactly. Florida is far and away the best team in the Atlantic. And they're going to prove it. They already proved it in the first round. Now they're going to solidify it here in round 2.
Yeah, honestly, I would be surprised if this series even goes six.
But I'll tell you this though. I love Swayman. I'm a big fan of Jim Montgomery. I think the Bruins, listen, I had Boston in seventh place in the Atlantic Division in our preseason predictions. I was not very high on them. And you know what? They overcame not having a lot of center depth. They overcame some questions on the defense, and they're still a very well-rounded group. But again, the reason why I'm picking Florida to sweep is less about the team Boston is and more about the team that the Panthers are.
Well
I
said.
mean, Panthers are insane. I
Yes.
mean, you know, their bottom six guys are unbelievable. I mean, Carter Verhaeghe. I mean, what a series he had in the first round against his former team. Barkov and Kachuk is a playoff performer. That back end stacked. Bobrovsky, insane. Like, let me give a little shout out to Sergei Bobrovsky on that save he made. That I think that has to be the best save of the last 5 years in the playoffs, at least, maybe in the last decade. Do you know the save I'm talking about?
I think so. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, unbelievable, unbelievable. So they're a really good team.
Yeah, no, Panthers are, in my opinion, like they were the best team on that quarter of the bracket. They might be the second or third best team overall. You can make a
Right.
very strong argument.
And if the Rangers are going to go to a Stanley Cup final this year,
They're going to have to go through them.
they're going to have to go through them and they're going to have to earn it flat out.
Yeah, that's not a series you win by luck. Or maybe it is, but
You know?
that's a round ahead.
Yeah, we'll see.
But yeah, I mean, you touched upon it earlier. I mean, Boston was looked at as a favorite last year. Then Florida did the thing, and it
Yeah.
really opened a lot of people's eyes to where both teams were really at. Florida on the rise. Boston, I can't get a good read on them because they're an extremely well coached team who should be doing better than they are. But they're just one of those teams, even though they made the second round, I can't see them making a run. I just can't.
Yeah, the Bruins starting lineup for me just leaves a little bit to be desired, to be honest. I think I see a lot of overperformers in within this forward group, right? Morgan Geekie is centering the first line in between Zaka and Pastrnak. You know, Brad Marchand's playing with Jake DeBrusk. James Van Riemsdyk, Trent Frederick, like John Beecher, Patrick Brown. Like I've never heard of those guys before this year, like and then they're making big impacts. Hampus Lindholm has always been good. Charlie McAvoy, we know what he is, number one defenseman. Parker Wotherspoon has just kind of came in out of nowhere and been really good on the defense. And again, if you have a good goaltender and a hot goaltender, I should say, it can take you places in the Stanley Cup playoffs. But they just don't have the depth lineup. And if you want to know how this series is going to go, just go look at what um, the Panthers and the Maple Leafs were like last year in the second round. Going to be very similar of a series, I think.
Yeah, Boston barely got by Toronto. And I mean, after what we saw last year transpire in the playoffs, it leaves no doubt in the back of my mind Florida's going to wipe the floor with them.
Yeah,
But because of the goaltending, I think they'll steal one.
right. We'll see.
All right, so you got him with a clean sweep then?
Goodbye.
Clean sweep. I got him in five, and that sets up a hypothetical Dallas Edmonton and oh no, excuse me, Colorado Edmonton for you, Dallas Edmonton for me, Western Conference final, and a hypothetical Rangers versus Panthers Eastern Conference final for both of us. So that is our second round predictions.
There you go. We'll see how wrong we are.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, seriously. I mean, I got 6 out of 8 right in the first round. That's not bad.
Yeah, I got five.
Yeah, with the chance for my final four to be intact. So that's promising.
There you go.
Is it going
Yeah,
to happen? No.
we'll see.
I never get anything right. But I'm so tempted to bet on Vancouver, but I just might stay away because I don't know. The odds are a trap, but I don't know, man. Just goaltending, especially with what happened after, with Vegas last year and Aiden Hill, backup goalie, carrying them to a cup. It's puzzling.
Yeah. To be
But
determined.
yeah, to be determined. But that was our first round recap and second round predictions for the 2024 first and second round of the Stanley Cup playoffs, and I am basically all tapped out at this point. I really got nothing else to you.
No, that's all. Just looking forward to fun remainder of the second round. Very weird that the second round started before the first round ended, but that was yesterday. So
Yeah, I was not happy about that. Like I said earlier, I was working, but no point in being mad about it going forward.
we figured it would make more sense to do the predictions when we had the actual matchup, even if we missed one game, so.
Yeah,
But Shades and I would have predicted the Stars to win game 7 anyway. So, you know,
pretty much.
pretty much.
I
But
should have bet on them. I knew it's all the bets I don't make that hit. I had no luck. Anyway,
yeah,
this has been episode 60 of Pucks and Brews. Hope everybody enjoyed. Hope everybody enjoys the second round of the playoffs. Should be a good one, and it should be much better than the first round, just from
let's,
an overall standpoint.
let's hope.
Yeah, seriously. But yeah, episode 60 of Pucks and Brews. Do us all a favor, or well, all of us, do both of us a favor. Please like, subscribe, share. All of our socials are listed in the description down below. I am so out of energy right now. I have been your host, Michael Shades Sparacino, alongside Liam the Shell Master Gottimer. Enjoy the second round, everyone.